Hi, Green Chatters. Welcome to another episode here on the Green Living Chat podcast. My name is David Ewusi-Mensah, and today I bet you we're bringing you something maybe you might not have thought of it. Dr. Collins Gameli Hodoli joins me on the podcast to talk about tackling air pollution in Africa. All that you need to know. Dr. Collins is a curious environmental scientist with a passion for environmental sustainability and public health protection. A Pan-African whose research interest cuts across DIY and Internet of Things approaches to revolutionize air quality monitoring in Ghana and wider Africa. He holds a PhD in Environmental and Agrifood. He is the founder and director of operations for Clean Air One Atmosphere, a non-profit he founded during his first year as a PhD student in the UK. His company is the first organization in Africa to have built and launched flagship mobile application that meaningfully communicates air quality data, which includes population health surveillance data to support air pollution health effects studies. And their work cuts across air pollution research in West Africa. In today's episode, we define air pollution and why it is important we have to know about that, and what are the contributing factors to air pollution in Africa, the leading factors that you should know about, its impact on our livelihoods, and what we're doing wrong in solving these problems. Can we build synergies to solve and reduce air pollution on the continent? This and more in today's conversation that I just can't wait to just dive into it for you to listen to all the insightful things that we talked about. So grab a coffee and let's dive into this episode. See you on the other side. This is the Green Living Chat podcast. Here, we define sustainability, educate, and discuss feasible solutions to achieve a regenerative ecosystem. In a world where sustainability has become a cliche and misused in practice, we bring you inspiring stories from the industry, research and development, and all stakeholders in between. And together, we can promote the sustainability agenda across the globe. This podcast is proudly produced and sponsored by our team at CAOA Solutions in Ghana. We come your way with new episodes this and every Sunday at 6 p.m. GMT. So dear Green Chatters, let's get started. Hello, Collins. Thank you so much for joining me today on the Green Living Chat podcast. This is going to be fun. I'm super excited about this. And so, hey, you're welcome.
Thank you so much, David. I appreciate everything and thanks for the support that's far on these. And happy to be here. I also believe that it's going to be a very interesting conversation, specifically looking at air quality, public health, and basically what we have been doing in Ghana and the rest of Africa. Thank you.
I'm excited, looking forward to this for a long time. We're going to dive into your work, build a little bit story about why should you be concerned about air quality in Ghana. I mean, let me tell you a story. So the first time I traveled out of Ghana, I was like, okay, now people around me check their phone and they check the weather when they're going out. Of course, I understand that you have to check whether it's going to rain or something, but sometimes they check the air quality. They are like PM 2 point something is not good. And I'm like, I mean, we are not used to this in Ghana, right? So I'm sure that, people might have these questions on their mind, and it's very interesting. We're going to dive into it. But let us know a little bit about you. Who are you? How was your childhood? How did you even end up, thinking about air quality? Tell us a little bit about your childhood and some of the experience that you can connect to where you are right now.
Thanks again. The thing is, I'm not so sure where to start, but I grew up I grew up in a village. It started with an LA school, and you can imagine what happens in those schools. As a then, nothing really occurs to me about what air quality is or what air pollution is. And so, we grew up using all these lanterns. It got to a point before we had lights and all of those. And so, in your childhood, you've been exposed to these smokes coming from these kerosene lamps and all of that. And then you then get to a point to realize that actually you've been exposed to a lot of health damaging emissions in your childhood, and there are still a number of people who've been exposed to that.
Yeah.
So the change actually happens at some point when I read somewhere in 2016 that about 5,600 Ghanaians die annually due to air pollution.
What?
So that was really,
Wow.
heartbreaking. I said to myself, so why are we not doing anything about this canker? If people are dying, it means that we should find a way out.
That's right.
So I started reading about that and then developed a proposal for PhD studies, and it was accepted. I went through, and yes, coincidentally, there was this opportunity that I had to leverage on local sensors for air quality monitoring. The key thing about these types of sensors is that the data quality is questionable due to temperature and relative humidity. And if you look at maybe species which are being monitored with, these terms are a bit technical anyway, like electrochemicals, as there is that cross sensitivity. Yeah. For instance, if you're looking at ozone and then NOx. So we wanted to see what we can do about that. Now, the gaps in knowledge that I've identified has to do with public knowledge on air pollution and its impact on health. That is with focus on Ghana and then Sub-Saharan Africa or wider Africa. That has to do with the fact that, one, government agencies, for instance, the EPA of Ghana populates data, but that data is not publicly or meaningfully communicated. So people do not really understand what it is. So the first part of, forming the NGO was to bridge that gap. And then the other part is to look at what could be a possible solution. And so what that means is that we need to have data readily available, meaningful data readily available for everyone to access and to be able to understand air quality levels and then how that impacts our health. So yes, that's how it all started.
Every story is peculiar. I mean, I'm picking up a lot of things out of what you're saying. And it really sounds interesting because I see a lot of, as I mentioned earlier, a lot of ignorance in our community. We see these things happening sometimes, like, let's say, if you're close to people who are burning stuff, you're sort of, it's not good, but I mean, you don't really think too much about it. And that's sort of a typical example you faced when you were growing up in a village, the lantern, cooking with firewood and those kind of things. But I think we're going a little bit ahead of ourselves. Let's try and explain. Let's try and explain to someone who might be listening to this conversation what on earth is air quality. You mentioned it a couple of times. Mentioned things about bridging the gap between air quality monitoring and data that has already been collected but not available to the public. Has it been even explained to people that what is this? So could you, in a very simple term or simple terms, tell us what air quality is and why is it necessary for us to even know what it is?
Well, I think to just put simply, air quality could just refer to as how poor or how dirty or how clean the air is. And that is measured with sort of, let me say, for instance, we use the air quality index to measure that, where there are color codes. And then so the quality is also dependent on the kind of species that are within the air surrounding us or the air that we breathe or that we are exposed to. So you are looking at chemical species, for instance, those that are of health concern. An example is particulate matter. And so when we are talking about particulate matter, we're just talking about all these particles that, we cannot really see, but then they are within the air that we breathe. So you're looking at if you are within an environment where there is a lot of dust or where there is dust, those things are there. The wind blown dust is something you can look at. And you're also looking at vehicular emissions. So you're looking at, say, maybe particulate matter 2.5, which refers to particles with sizes less than or equal to 2.5 microns. They are very tiny, smaller than the human hair. And then it means that we cannot even see them. But once those things are within the air, we breathe them unknowingly. And then, globally, it's a major health risk factor. And then it is also causing cancer, it is causing respiratory issues. And if you look at even other species, for instance, carbon monoxide or black carbon, you can look at areas where it causes a degree of, unconsciousness, or it also results in you collapsing if you are exposed to that at higher concentrations. So yes, it's a number of issues, but the key thing is, how do we even know that these are the constituents? So,
Exactly.
which is where we need to do the measurement. And for instance, in our part where we lack even the technical experts, or we lack the capability in terms of monitoring due to lack of logistics and the cost involved, we wanted to see how we could use these low-cost sensors to be able to bridge that gap. And as I was saying earlier, there is that degree of data incorrectness. And so if that is the right word, we need to look at how do we correct that data. And so, because there are issues with temperature and relative humidity. However, they can as well be used, for instance, to bridge this public knowledge gap. So it is actually a key thing that we can consider, especially in an environment like Ghana, where we don't have a lot of monitoring going on, because monitoring is centered in Accra. I understand there are a number of things going on the ground when it comes to research institutions doing monitoring. But the key thing is, where is that data? Whether that data is also publicly available for everyone to make a decision is another thing to consider, which is why, research is a component of addressing the issue, but then we need to look at how we are using that evidence to make an impact within society, which is where we come to play. So we are addressing the public knowledge gap. We have launched these mobile application, as I was saying earlier, that we use a color code system. So for instance, from 0 to 50 is good, the air quality is good, and that is marked with the color code green. And so if you're within an area where we have a sensor deployed within that environment, so that data is populated and then sent in the AQI format on the mobile application, and it tells you what the quality of the air within that environment is. So, and it also gives you an advice on what to do as an individual so that you are not exposed to these health damaging emissions. I'm not so sure if this answers your question with regards to when we are talking about air quality, but yeah, the thing just refers to how clean or how dirty the air is. And for you to be able to understand that, you need to measure. And for you to also measure, you need to communicate what you are measuring or what you have measured for someone who is a citizen or who is interested or who has to know, to be able to really relate to that data.
Yeah. I mean, you have touched on so many things that I would like to follow up on. You've talked about the impact, of course. You've talked about some of the, simple things that contribute to this. You've talked about what air quality is and how we can measure it, and why we should be concerned about it. I want you to join me on this drive to sort of go into a rural community. In as much as we are talking more about Ghana, I'm sure someone somewhere might be listening. So, if someone doesn't know what contributes to it, let's go to the village. Let's go to a rural community, right? So, you are telling me that air quality is how good or how bad the quality of the air is, or what is inside that. What are some of the activities that I do on a daily basis or on a weekly basis that sort of contributes to this? Because I don't think that naturally the air could just be bad, right?
Yes, that's correct. That's a great way of putting things across, and thank you for bringing that to light. Let's put it in the Ghanaian or the village or even a worldwide perspective, research has proven that sources of air pollution, basically, for instance, you can look at garbage burning, and if you come to Africa, or if you come to Ghana, for instance,
a key source an everyday thing.
a key source is vehicular emissions. And because one, you're looking at the standard of the fuel we're using, and you're also looking at how good are the cars on the road. Most of the cars on the road, for instance, though there is no data at hand for me to be able to prove this, you can just tell that, most of the diesel cars on the road lack catalytic converters. Because one, we are within this culture where people do not undertake maintenance.
Yeah.
And so whether even cars are roadworthy to be actually driven on the road is another key thing to consider. So when it comes to that, you're looking at what is the role of, for instance, if you come to Ghana, what is the role of DVLA? What is DVLA actually doing to ensure that cars also do not pollute? And then if you're also talking about the government entity or agency, this is where EPA comes to play as well, because there's a statutory organization or agency that is responsible for Ghana's environment and ensuring that we live in a sound and a very conducive environment that is going to promote health and well-being. So this is an agency that is cut from government subvention. And so though that is not an excuse, almost the things are based on that. Because, for instance, if there are areas where we do not even know what is going on in terms of air quality, at least you could use these local sensors to establish some form of indicative measurement. So we know that at least these species are within the atmosphere. For instance, if you look at particulate matter or PM 2.5, it is a key species which is used for setting global health standards. So which means that even if we are not able to monitor all other key species which are important for us to understand air quality within a specific environment, we can actually use these species to be able to establish a baseline or an observational value for us to take action. We need to take it step by step, and then we also need to look at what exactly is our stage now. We are at a stage where public knowledge is very limited. We are at a stage where monitoring is not within every region, within every constituency, within every district. So it is very challenging. And again, if you narrow it down again to the sources, as you're saying, people use biomass, agricultural practices, for instance, is also a huge source. People tend to, after cultivating or whatever is left, then they just burn. And which is also a key source, because if you look at even research papers, something published by Bawa, it's 2019, it referred to that the slash and burn agricultural practices in West Africa or Africa is a huge contributing factor to air pollution. So those are the areas. Research has already proven sources of air pollution almost within every jurisdiction and potential sources. Though there could be some mixes when it comes to, aerosol buildup, you don't know what the constituent may be. It could be a mix of a number of things based on the jurisdiction or geographical location, but that doesn't change the source of air pollution. It's just a constituent that are different. And so we need to tackle that. But for us to do that, we need to have some form of measurement. And even so, if you look at these low-cost sensors that actually have problems with data quality, that doesn't, what I say is this: the source of air pollution does not change because of the kind of instrument you use to measure, right?
Okay.
So though there is a problem when it comes to the data quality, which means that there could be higher or underreporting. I mean, there could be overreporting or underreporting when you compare the low-cost sensor to the regulatory or the reference grade monitor. It doesn't change where it is actually coming from. So which offers us the opportunity to actually try and see what kind of mechanisms we have to put in place that when we are using these low-cost devices, which are really cheap, for us to be able to understand sources of air pollution within our setting. Because, with $150, you can buy one of these devices and just clamp it somewhere. Some of them are cellular, which means that we do not even need to have access to Wi-Fi connection to be able to get them working or report data. Some are even solar-based. For instance, there is Clarity, which is solar-based. So Clarity Movement provides these sensors that are solar-based, and a number of organizations out there, for instance, Earth Science is doing a similar thing. And if you look at Purple Air, these ones are internet-based. I mean, in the way that need to have access to internet connection on site. But if you look at the Clarity one, as well as these AirNote ones, which recently we have mount two of them or co-located two of them at Legon, these ones are solar based and they're also cellular. So in an environment where we do not even have a lot of infrastructure in place to support things like these, where there is no internet connection in every household, and even where we have these mobile networks operating not everywhere that you can access data. We should take advantage of these devices which actually fit into our infrastructure and see what we can do in terms of bridging the air quality data gap and also bridging the air quality public knowledge gap.
Perfect. Yeah, we are really going to dive a little more into what you're doing with your company. You're a true business guy. You've already started talking about your projects. It's very interesting anyway. But you made mention about some of the stakeholders who are working in this sector. Obviously, we have seen that a lot hasn't been done in this particular area. We've already talked about what air quality is, how far it has gone, some of the contributing factors, especially in our local regions. We've even talked about how it impacts our health. And of course, we know that if it impacts our health, it's going to impact the economy, it's going to impact national development and our livelihoods. These bases have already been talked about. Now, you guys are giving certain solutions. You've already compared, other organizations that are doing something similar, and even some of the loopholes we can still find in the operations, and how it might not be very feasible with our local communities or even areas where might be in the cities, but still do not have access to some of the things they depend to work on. So could you tell us a little bit more about what the vision is for Clean Air, One Atmosphere? How did this whole initiative start? You gave us a little bit just of it, but could you just summarize this for us? How did this whole thing start? I know you saw a loophole in the situation when it comes to air quality in Ghana. And what is the vision that you're looking out to execute?
Even let me just refer our listeners to this. As in 2019 alone, Ghana lost about 1.6 billion of its GDP or her GDP to air pollution alone. And so it's a huge, economic loss.
Yeah.
And if you talk about, public health, every year about 16,000 Ghanaians die due to air pollution. And,
Wow.
what actually happened or what actually pushed me to start this not-for-profit was that in 2016, I read something on my joyonline.com that's about 5,600 Ghanaians. I'll try and see if I can fetch that reference for you.
Sure.
And that was even a report, I understand, was from WHO or the World Bank Group in 2013. That was a 2013 report. So if something from 2013, I got to, read that in 2016, you can imagine that even within that gap.
That's right.
Or within that space of year, there is, the number could actually go up, because as of 2016, UNICEF reported that 520 million kids in Africa do not breathe clean air. That's a huge problem.
Yeah.
And now from 2016 to this point, and even if you look at Africa's population, it's not, actually going down. It's been going up. And projections are there. But one key thing that I also say is that if you want to be able to mitigate air pollution, we also need to look at population control mechanisms, because once population is going up, there's going to be pressure on the circular economy. We need to be looking at where we should get energy and what kind of energy we should be actually using, and what kind of food, or even if we are doing food production, what kind of activities or mechanisms are going into food production. And again, 780,000 Africans die every year due to air pollution. So if you're somebody who is concerned about where you live, where you come from, and how things could be done right, it is simply say that you should just brighten your little corner. So what we intended to do as an organization is brighten this little corner, So we want to see how we can contribute our quota to addressing the air pollution challenge or the environmental pollution challenge in Ghana, and then
That's right.
something which could be a footprint or a blueprint for the rest of Africa. So our main goal is actually to revolutionize air quality monitoring with low-cost sensors using citizen science. Citizen science in the sense that we want to ensure that every citizen within this country, in this continent, understands that you don't need to be a scientist, or you don't need to just have a background in science or whatever to be able to understand when it comes to things that impact your health from the
Yeah.
scientific perspective. So how do we involve everybody? How do we get everybody on board? We need to make that very simple enough for people to understand. And for us to be able to do that, we want to see how we can capture every household. And I do not also have data to prove this, but just from a layman's perspective, I would say that almost in every household there's a smartphone, and there's a possibility that that smartphone will be an Android device.
Hopefully.
Because we can potentially buy that. They are not so expensive, and they're easy to navigate or use. So we deploy this mobile application we call Yakokwe. Yakokwe, to simply put, is my mother's tongue, because I so much admire my mom. I appreciate her and I love her for everything she's done for us. She's from Togo. And so I try to use the language to see how we can coin something, to be able to. But this is something which I've never actually thrown light on. And so.
Well, you didn't say that in your introduction.
So the key thing is is simply like, to simply say is air. Yeah. And so when you say kokwe, is clean. So something that is clean. And so we say the air is clean. So literally, it's just clean air. Yakokwe, to simply put, it's just clean air. So we want to see how these could be a household name to be able to, evoke the interest of every individual to be able to change behaviors in terms of, for instance, you said something earlier which has to do with burning of garbage and all of that. Yeah. So how can I reduce air pollution? So if you look at the app, for instance, there is a section which is about how can I reduce air pollution? So becoming a responsible citizen means that you should take actions that also do not just protect your health, but then the health of the environment and also everyone around us, because air quality affects our health, affects agriculture, affects ecosystems, and even the climate, because there is that connection between some species and then, air quality species and climate change species. For instance, tropospheric ozone is something to talk about. And so those are the areas we're looking at.
Wow. I'm very interested in what you're doing, because I feel it's a very important thing that has not been solved, and it's still a big loophole. And so really congratulations on trying to, put solutions to this. I want to ask a question, but I really need to clarify something before I ask that. What is the highest contributing factor to Ghana's air quality? Would you want to say that, let's say, burning of firewood, or let's say cars or industries?
It's basically vehicular and other natural sources, vehicular, natural sources, and garbage burning. Those are the key things to consider. But the thing is, how do we even take care of that? Yeah, so until the people get to know what their actions are, the results of their actions on the quality of the air, they wouldn't be able to do anything, which is why we need to get them to understand the data. We need to get them to know what is going on. So EPA should not just populate data and keep it there. You populate this data for... well, the thing is that we have used resources to gather this data. So if you want the data, you need to pay for it. Which to me,
what happened
is
to the
not taxes. Well, because one, they will tell you we cut from government subvention, so we are using our own resources to gather this data. But the thing is this: if you are mandated by the government, by the constitution, to protect the environment, to keep the environment is basically everything around us. So you have to protect the people within that environment as well. And you have to protect biodiversity. You have to, everything within the environment has to be protected. Now, anthropogenic activities, which is mainly activities from us, from men, from women, from kids, from everywhere, is a major source of air pollution within our context. For instance, animals do not drive cars. It's we, the humans. Animals do not farm. It is us. So how do we change that? For us as citizens to be able to be part of the solution, we need to know what is going on.
Yeah,
And so this is how we can also support government policy to be able to address the situation. So you do not, as an entity, as an organization, a regulatory organization, populate data and just ask people to pay for it. The data needs to be communicated in a way that people will understand. So when you are bringing a policy, for instance, you have to service your car within this number of months. People will understand, will appreciate why they have to, because they know that if they don't, it's a problem, not just for them, but also for the other person. Maybe someone is asthmatic, and then your car is polluting a lot. And, if you look at our setting, they are roadside food sellers. Those people are exposed a lot. These people take care of their families. They take care of, and this is the vulnerable population. So what should we do to protect them as well? Because they keep the economy running and they push people to get to where they need to get to. And so we need to look at things from that angle, that we should have some form of empathy for the people, that this is the data. We have populated this. This is what I understand. There are things going on now that they want to, actually publish and in a form of the AQI, which is the air quality index. But how long should this take? And again, with the low-cost devices, for instance, about $150, you can get one. So why do we not even have them within every region to actually engage the people, to actually get them to be part of this revolution that, we all need to be part of the solution, not just to contribute to the problem. These are the things we need to be looking at. And this is where we come in. We want to be able to bridge that gap. And we are not doing that alone. We are so much very grateful to our international collaborators, specifically Columbia University in the United States of America. All the sensors we have deployed in collaboration with local institutions, for instance, with Dr. Kofi Amagan, who is our patron, with Dr. Hughes, who is also at Legon, that we seek advice from all the time as well. He's been very supportive. And these folks, for instance, if I talk about Columbia, I'm also talking about Professor Dan Westervelt and Professor Darby Jack, all these folks, plus other organizations that we have been in contact with and we have been part of as a community members, for instance, Open AQ. Actually, this thing has been able to get to this far because of a workshop held in Accra somewhere in May 2018 by Open AQ. So we were part of the people that attended the workshop, and then we started pushing from there. We even wrote a community statement and all those that can be found on the internet. Then we started to push this, that there should be a solution. And so from 2018, we have been pushing this till now. So yes, that's basically it.
Hi there, just a quick one. If you find our conversations worth listening, why don't you share them with your friends and connections? Please help us reach more and new listeners by leaving a review, commenting, or rating us on any platform where you get your podcast. We can't wait to hear your thoughts and ideas, so share them with us via a social media platform or email. Find more details in the show notes. Now let's get back into today's conversation. Well, you have touched so many things. I would like us to talk more about data soon. But I mean, it's really sad. I mean, in as much as it's like sort of course, congratulations on your partners international wise. It's really sad that, I mean, such a person with a good heart and patriotic enough to think about all these things and want an initiative, and we don't have, local organizations trying to support or even buy into the idea. I mean, I know it's part of the challenges, but I want us to talk about that also later. But I was actually laying a point earlier, which you came in with a very interesting submission, that of course, we identified the problem. You guys are sort of bringing sort of awareness to people and sort of giving them some of the solutions. Is it going to be more interesting? We sort of build some partnership or groups of stakeholders who are involved in this. Now, I was asking you about what is some of the leading sources of pollution or hindrance to our air quality? Because I just wanted to know who is contributing more to it, which activities are contributing more to it, what are some of the alternative sustainable ways of doing the things that are sort of emitting these things. And then we have people who are sort of engaging in these activities who can bring their strength or they kind of form a synergy to be able to educate people. Because if we go out there, give the apps to people, people find out, oh, this is how bad the air quality is in this region. What do I have to do? Now, of course, we don't have people coming for our waste. We still have to burn it. So what are you telling me? How do you want me to solve this? What do you think about, sort of building this kind of partnerships? Is it something that you're thinking of, or it's something that could be good? Or what do you think about this whole initiative?
That's really great. Firstly, we are registered with the Ghana APA, and so we understand that it is important to address key challenges, but then in doing that, it has to be done in collaboration or with synergies, which is something you've laid across. Now, when it comes to air pollution, we're not only looking at the EP, but that's a key area to get to, because they are responsible for the environment and the people and biodiversity or whatever. So what we are saying is this, that we have a DVLA and there is the NPA, which is the National Petroleum Authority. And then we have the district assemblies or metropolitan assemblies, because they also play a role. And then we have these waste collection or waste management. So these are the areas that, if you are building a sort of collaboration, you should be looking at, or we should be looking at. But because the EPA has actually got an upper hand in terms of what it has to do when it comes to the environment and public health, we thought now that's a key part to consider. And then how does that really relate to the rest of the areas, for instance, the DVLA? So these are areas we are considering as well, though we have not actually touched base with them. And we've also been in contact with the research institutions, because evidence is necessary for us to make progress. And even for you to even measure that progress, you need to have these research institutions on board, because there should be that ongoing research, and then there should be ongoing mitigation. So you've also touched base on what should be done. I know that, okay, the air quality is bad within my environment, which is where we talk about the source identification or source apportionment studies. For you to be able to address air pollution, you need to know the sources. Yes. So now that a lot of the time, because we do not have local data for us to understand sources, we mostly rely on model data or satellite data to identify sources. The thing is, these are estimates. They are great, but they are estimates because they do not present the exact situation. However, they present a footprint for you to use to be able to, define some pathways for correction. And research has always proven that vehicular emission is a huge source of air pollution, or a major source of air pollution in our setting. And if you look at agricultural practices as well, the slash and burn, that's another thing. And so how do we, deal with that? Which is where, for instance, in Ghana, the DVLA comes to play. The cars on our roads, are they good enough to be on our roads? The fuel that these cars are using, is it good enough to be used? What is the sulfur content? What is this content? What is that content? Is it something which is okay? Well, people are only looking at how to generate revenues as companies, and then they do not care about public health. These are the things. So, which is why we also need to have measures in place to be able to evaluate, the strategies. For instance, if we are focusing on just cars now, and then the situation, we do not know what it is like because we do not have measurements or we do not have data. That's a problem. So again, these, if you look at the regulatory monitors, they are very expensive, in hundreds of thousands of dollars that you can get some. But if you look at these low-cost devices, just a few, you could get some. And then there are also proven mechanisms for data correction, which we can apply to that. But as I was saying earlier, if we are able to identify sources because of, the potential of these devices to be able to populate huge data, because every minute, every second data is coming. And that can be used in a way to be able to understand sources, which has been done elsewhere, for instance, in the advanced or the Americas or the United Kingdom. These devices were used to actually identify hotspots of air pollution. And so we can as well do that within our setting and be able to find measures. So if it is vehicular, what do we do? How do we, mitigate it? Do we look at the cars on the road and ensure that, ABCD is working? Or do we even introduce polluter pay policies to deter people, or to actually ensure that, people are really paying attention, not just to the kind of fuel they put in their cars, but also to ensure that they are protecting public health? Or do we sort of introduce what has been introduced in London, which is, the no emission zones or whatever, or low emission zones? Do we do that sort of thing in our part? But, you also need to look at mitigation, and then you also need to look at what people need to do to eat. Somebody is, for instance, is looking for what to eat in a day, trying to, strive to get food for the family, and then you're talking about air pollution. What does air pollution mean to that person? Right. So if you're telling me that I shouldn't use this car, what other alternative do you have there for me? Mm-hmm. If you're telling me I should not buy a car to use, I should hop on a public transport, is the public transport even reliable?
That's right.
Or, if you're telling me to use electric cars, do I even have somewhere to be able to charge these batteries of the car? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Those are the areas. And so it has to do a lot more with town and country planning. It has to do a lot more about changing attitude. It has to do a lot with a lot of education, because not until that is done, there's going to be a problem, in the sense that we'll just, be going around the bush, in the sense that we know this is the problem, but then we wouldn't know how to tackle it because it's already damaged. We can only be looking at, oh yes, this is it, it's coming from here, but we can't do anything about it because we do not really have the things in place to deal with it.
Yeah. Well, I think that you've touched really on lots of points. I was going to ask you actually about some of the challenges and, some of the things that you face in moving forward. You have touched all these topics. There are a lot of things running through my mind, thinking about where can we start from, if we want to try and solve these issues. You made mention about planning, policies, the government, local people, how we can support these visions from the government. But if the government is not willing, where do we start from? You already have an initiative that you're trying to create awareness on this, and people are coming in from international background to support this vision that you have. You also made mention about data availability, which I would like us to stress a little bit on. But before we do that, you have already made mention about some of the challenges, right? But could you highlight, specifically, you made mention about, I think, technology, about the standards and how expensive these things are. We've talked about behavioral stuff that are sometimes, people sort of prioritizing economic benefits or probably economic well-being against, trying to go for a more sustainable option and other things. But in general, what are some of the challenges, in addition to these things that you have laid out?
The thing is, you did say that, okay, what are we going to do about it? What we intend to do, and so what we have started is this, that, if you look at our site and you compare that to agricultural extension, this is the key example that I use.
Yeah.
That's, in agricultural extension, if you go to the old farmers with an idea or new technology, that this is a new technology and this is going to work, what the old farmer tells you is that this is how we have been doing it, this is how it works, and that's what we're going to stick to. So that has been a problem, especially in our part of the world. So how do we deal with that? Amazingly, we have launched recently a project which is Teach the Teacher, Teach the Future Air Quality campaign within West Africa. Okay. And so what we intend to do with this is also to use the secondary schools within the country So what we do is that we are not only creating awareness of air quality or air pollution, but we are using secondary schools within the country. We teach these students how to undertake air quality monitoring with these local sensors, how to understand the data, how to analyze it, and how to make meaning. And so, for instance, the first school or the first ever school within Africa that we have engaged, or within West Africa or in Ghana, is Methodist Girls High School. And I'm so thankful to the science club, the management of the school, that they bought into the idea, and we have launched the project. So amazingly, we have populated some data from there, demonstrated to the students what it means. And then, so we refer them to, for instance, the hourly or the daily variation or the daily trends of air quality within that environment. And so we explain to them what that means and then how that relates to human activities. And so we ask them these questions. How do you intend to mitigate these? Because this thing is from your environment. This thing is happening under your eyes. So what will you do about it? And amazingly, these students, they came up with these ideas that one, because they've observed that when they're sweeping, the quality of the air goes bad. So they said, okay, we have to plant grass. And so we do not sweep, we just do hand picking. Or maybe we have pavement blocks, or we have, public footpath where we have pavement blocks on those. And then the other part they talk about is that because when they are burning as well, then the levels go up, which means that the quality of the air is so bad. So they said they will be looking at, waste segregation and recycling. So you imagine these kids, growing up to go and take up courses in atmospheric science, environmental science, or even finance. We talk about sustainable finance, we talk about sustainable science. They will take these things up, and even if they become engineers, for instance, they are into road construction, civil engineers, road construction, they will not only be looking at roads for vehicles, they'll be thinking about where it's going to be a public footpath, where it's going to be a bicycle lane, because already they have it in the back of their mind that if it is just going to be vehicles, okay, they will pollute a lot. If it is just going to be, a road that is just solely vehicles, where is the public footpath? If I'm telling people that, okay, do not buy cars, you should cycle within the cities, where's the bicycle lane for me to use? So if they are bringing these things, which means that, that is how we're trying to address the situation. It's a huge thing, and then it's not going to take a year or 5 for us to address air pollution in Ghana or Africa. It's going to be something generational. It's going to be something which might take even 10 or 20 years for us to be able to do something meaningful. And which means that we cannot do it by ourselves alone. We can't do it just by us running around, but we can evoke the interest of the younger generation to take the necessary actions if they are coming tomorrow to plan our cities, if they are planning our towns, if they are planning, our local authorities or areas, all these things will be part of it. So it's not really just looking at awareness. We're also looking at how data could be used from these devices. And then, even if they are to be building these devices locally, what should be their concern? If they are to communicate the data from these devices, what should they be looking at? So yes, those are the things. So from 2018, it has always been, our personal funds. Nobody has given us money to do anything. The only sort of support we have ever had was, sensors from the international collaborators. And I forgot to mention earlier, Pepperley also donated some sensors to us for us to use, 2 of them. And so, those are the areas until recently that we have won a seed funding from the Columbia University of $10,000.
Yeah,
so that we
more
also,
money.
So that's, we are even using that to do projects which will be looking at how we can use these local sensors to understand specific agricultural practices on local air quality. So these will be done with other organizations, for example, Afrique Air and Clarity Movement. We're also going to do that with Open AQ, which is one of the organizations we are constantly working with. So yes, those are the key things. So the challenge has always been, where are the funds? And even in approaching the schools, there's a lot of bureaucracy. I remember going to one of the training colleges, and we discussed very well, everything was going great, and we wanted to put a sensor there, and then boom, there was misconception and a number of things. People were thinking this is a snooping device, this is a spyware, you know, what is this? And it's a similar situation that was raised by one of the secondary schools within the country as well, you know. So how do we move around, or how do we navigate all these challenges?
Yeah.
And another critical part is that, you know, getting the info out and then working as a group to be able to attain that sort of goal that we want to. The goal has always been one thing, you know, to give Africa, to give Ghana cleaner air.
Yeah.
That, you know, no child or no individual in Africa should be exposed to dirty air, should suffer the consequences of the effects of dirty air because of our inactions. And which is the reason why, regardless of funding available or not, you know, you see me on my foot even interviewing
we have to
people
get going.
exactly on the street, trying to just capture something and draw public attention. There are a number of radio shows that we have done, and thanks to Dr. Thomas Tego of University of Ghana, Legon, he's put us on Star FM. Has got this show they call Horizon, and so they put us on that show for a number of times. We have you know, been able to engage the public, but we need more of those, and we need to push harder. And we also need to engage more, in the sense that this is what I say to people, that if you give me low-cost census, I can address the air pollution challenge within Africa. I do not necessarily need to look at whether the data is correct or not, but I also need to look at what is the current gap that I am bridging. The main gap is that people do not really understand how air quality affects their health. And the gap is that we do not even have monitoring going on within every. For you to be able to initiate a change, people need to understand something.
Yeah.
And so we need to take it a step-by-step approach. We are not where maybe, for instance, most of the countries in Europe are, where there is, you know, data everywhere that they can, you know, you can just get a local sensor even put in your home.
That's
because
right.
There is internet connectivity and all those things in place, electricity, you can just bang, get something. And so in our part, what is the focus? What has it been? And, you know, even referring to town and country planning and all of that, how even our settlements and slums and all of those. So a number of things come to play.
It's a very exciting conversation we are having now, and I think you're drawing a lot of people's attention to be concerned about all these issues. And I hope that people that are listening are really getting educated to be aware. And the issue is not just being aware and then, I mean, you keep it, but we have to move forward. We're going to talk about how can people collaborate with you, but I know that data forms a very important part of your work. You made mention about this early, but I want you to highlight a little bit, just briefly, how data is important to this whole thing. I really want you to specifically talk about that, and also tell us about which areas can people collaborate. What are open areas where, I mean, your organization will say that, okay, you guys can help us with this. This is available. We are open to this. We are open to that. So could you give us a little bit about these two, the importance of data and how can people collaborate with you?
You know, data plays a key role. For you to be able to identify a problem, it means that there is an evidence that there is that problem. And so when it comes to air pollution, for instance, what is data saying? Do we even have that data? And so which is why we leverage these low-cost devices to actually have some information, if not in quotes the perfect form, but then in a form that is indicative enough that we can engage the wider public. So we need data. So we have been trying to deploy these devices, and we have been deploying them. The intention is to get as much as we can to deploy at everywhere that we can as much as possible.
Yeah.
So if you look at, for instance, even the mobile application that we have developed, there's a Google Sheet that we have pushed across on that. When I say we, you know, I'm fronting the organization, but then I don't work alone. I can't do everything by myself. I don't know everything. I don't.
You won't be here by now.
Much. Exactly. So I work with a team, and then I'm so grateful to the team, the IT lead, that is Kenneth Kwachi Jemfi, and then our co-founder Anthony Posu, our volunteers, especially John Terry Molaja, and a number of folks that have volunteered to do a number of things for us. Data plays a key role, which is why that even Google form is there. For instance, if an environment, we put a sensor that is close to a hospital, what we intend to do is this, or even if not close to a hospital, what we intend to do is this. Is anyone living within that environment that suffers from any respiratory or cardiovascular or anything related to air pollution within that environment? How often does that person visit the hospital? And then another part of that is that if there is any factory or you live close to any factory, or if you live close to a highway, or if there is any air quality monitor within your environment, if there is none, are you willing to host a sensor for us? Because we understand that data plays a key role, you know. So one thing that we are doing with that data again is that we want to be able to understand how, you know, all these air quality levels or estimates can be used against health surveillance data to be able to do some estimation.
Yeah.
So if the quality of the air is so bad within that environment, and then the person is always visiting a hospital with asthma or worsened cases of asthma or an aggravated cases of asthma, is it related to air pollution? Is it because the levels are always high? But that also means that we need to have data. And I've always said that Africa's revolution will be data driven. So people need to understand this data, even when it comes to air quality. So we do not just, you know, deploy the sensor and leave it there, or just use the data for whatever we want to use it for. We transform that into a format that anyone at all can be able to easily understand, which is why we communicate that in the air quality index. And as I said earlier, we use the color code system, which is the US color code system. For instance, what we're doing now is based on the US AQI, because we fetch the data from the purple air map. So that is communicated, and then we give advice based on the level. So the higher this number, which is the AQI, the more polluted the air is. And then that is also associated with the color code, and then there is an explanation or a point to understand.
Yeah.
So data is key. Without data, we cannot make any meaningful impact. And even if we have said that, okay, for instance, the idea of these students saying, let's plant trees or let's plant grass so we do not sweep, but then we do hand picking on campus. Imagine that in a year or two, or in a couple of months, they have initiated projects like this on campus, and there is no data to actually see whether what they have done is impacting on air quality positively. We cannot really rule out a similar project in another environment because we do not know.
Yeah.
So we need data on the ground, which I have always said that it is important to undertake air quality monitoring research, but specifically in our environment, we also need to do that in line or simultaneously or concurrently with mitigation. So which means that if I am monitoring, I should also be looking at what are possible mitigation protocols that I can implement within this environment.
Right.
That should be based on data. And so with this data, I can even track that, okay, this mitigation strategy is working. Is something possible that could work in another region? And, you know, coincidentally, our setting is almost similar. If you go, for instance, to maybe my mother's country, Togo, you can see that people are still using charcoal and biomass and all of that, you know, in some areas. So if I'm introducing, you know, some incentives like, you know, giving improved cook stoves to other organizations, to people to use in their homes, or to use LPG, what is even the cost of LPG? Recently, the government of Ghana shoot up the price of LPG. You know, this is something, and economically, I don't think that is right, in a sense that household air pollution contributed hugely to a health burden within our setting and in Ghana, for instance. And you cannot compare the benefits of using LPG for cooking to being exposed, or to being sort of putting in a measure that is just going to say that you are stabilizing economic gains, so the price of LPG should go up.
Yeah.
If you are losing 1.6 billion in a year alone to air pollution in economic terms, and then about 16,000 of your people are dying due to air pollution, and household air pollution is contributing hugely to public health burden, I don't see why a government should be increasing, prices of LPG, because if you are telling people to use LPG to do cooking and heating at home, and then the prices are up, what are you telling them? You're telling them that they should go back to the dirty sources of energy.
Exactly.
So
Wow.
data plays a role. The only way that we can be able to do the change is to keep track of data, not just the air quality data, but as well as other forms of data. For instance, as I said, health surveillance data is a key thing. And we lack that, especially in Ghana at the moment. I don't know if they are developing anything concrete, but which
Hopefully.
is why we have, yeah, let's hope so. Which is why even on the app, you see something similar. I'm not saying this is a classical approach to, or this is a typical approach to addressing the challenges,
But at least
but
a good way
then
to
these
start.
are exactly these are things that we can actually look at
Yeah.
and implement to push things forward. So we actually open to any form of collaboration, especially anything that has to do with maybe collaborating to actually develop proposals together for grants that we can initiate and expand or advance our community air quality monitoring efforts. We are open to that. We are also open that locally or internationally, that senior high schools or educational institutions or research institutions can also just touch base with us, and let's actually do monitoring within our setup. One of the key things is that we want to see how we can integrate sustainable science into every facet of our economy or our activities. And so
Yeah.
that also must mean that people that are within the educational setup now understand these things. So we are open to collaboration in those regards. And we open to any form of collaboration that is for making a positive impact. And even if this has to do with just going out within communities to give a talk,
Yeah.
or being invited to do a presentation, and just it could be a hospital setup that we want to say, for instance, nurses, doctors, or health practitioners should be able to tell people or patients that you know air pollution is also a problem,
That's a
and it
viable
can be
area.
it can
Very.
be a source of your ailments. It can be a source of, because for instance, if you look at pregnancy, it leads to giving birth preterm in women, and then it also leads to having babies born underweight. So all these are health concerns. So how do we even have collaboration within health facilities within the country, or outside, to be able to engage these things? And which is why a number of things comes to play. So those are the areas. And wherever there is fund at all, somebody should just touch our back and say that, yeah, there is funding here, we can use it for this task. Well, we are happy to do that. We will judiciously use that money to attain the purpose of why it is given to us. That is because so far we have proven from 2018 that even without funding from anywhere, we could get going, we could do things right, and we could ensure that we have started a revolution that is something reproducible across board.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, this conversation has really been an interesting one. Eye-opening, of course. We have talked about so many things. And I mean, if you're listening to this and you think that this is something that you like to invest in, this is something that you like to collaborate in, all the areas that Collins has mentioned, just dive into the show notes. We're going to put all their details there, contacts. And you could just shoot them an email or contact them via WhatsApp or Instagram or any of their social media platforms and engage with them. If you're a researcher, you think you could partner, please just do that. And let's get this message out there, because we really need to educate ourselves. If you look at the economic impact, our health impact, and also the impact on national development, we cannot keep losing people because of our own activities. So I think this has been a very important conversation, and of course very necessary. We have shared so many things. I actually have the app on my phone. I've gone through it. It's super great, self-explanatory. And so get an app, get to know the nest sensor that is very near to you, and get to know how it's looking. And if you have any investor who could also help us to get more product and more sensors, even better ones, that would be really good. And if you're in the government, you also think that this is a great initiative, of course, you should have started this long time ago, and you should have been concerned about this long time ago. And please, let's support these private entities so that we can all try to move forward. In closing, Collins, how do you see this whole initiative in the next couple of years?
We just want to see a collaborative approach towards air pollution mitigation and research within Ghana and entire Africa. I know things are going on everywhere. Things are going on, especially even within the continent. To be very sincere with you, we actually the very first, locally built organization that has initiated something like this when it comes to even a mobile application that populates health data.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I've seen the app is great.
I appreciate that.
Congratulations. It's good.
Thank you so much. And one thing that I want to also touch base on is that this is not built by anybody foreign. This is built by Africans. This is built by Ghanaians.
Nice.
What that means is that, we are capable and we can address our problems, but then that cannot be done being alone. It should be done, or it can be done collaboratively. It can be done with local partnerships. It can be done with, international partnerships. At the end of the day, the goal is that, the next person should not die due to air pollution in Ghana or Africa, because we do not want that to happen. And for that not to happen in the next couple of years, there should be almost monitors within every community in Africa.
Mm-hmm.
There should be an understanding of air quality and its impact on public health everywhere. That, kids on the streets, at schools, from everywhere should be able to know that, I do not have to burn rubbish. I do not have to throw things around. I do not have to, be using a solid fuel for cooking and heating. And so government should also look at incentives that are in place for people not to be burning waste.
Yeah.
So if those are the key things that we want to see, that there should be a transformation, and that should be based on, fusing everything, art, science all together, engaging everyone holistically, so that we all play a role in protecting the health of our people and environment.
Sounds super. I really hope that we can all see this happening. And so before I let you go, you have been working in this for a very long time, studying and everything. If there is one thing, you have talked about some of your projections that you like to see. If there is one thing that you would like to change in this sector, or probably related to air quality, that is also related to human impact, what would that change be?
Wow.
If you need 3 days, I can call you later to think about it.
I know it's it's sorry, it just took me off the hook. I'll just look at planning of our communities. That's the first thing that I'll look at.
Yeah,
because that actually integrates everything. Where there should be roads, where there should be, waste collection, where there should be properly planning our cities.
Yeah, well, it's been fun talking to you, Collins. I've learned so much from this conversation, and I hope that we can also use this platform to also share, for people to learn and for people to also start initiatives. I'm really looking forward to impact, and really looking forward to seeing all the things that you discussed, and also people downloading the app and getting to know what you're doing, and also making a change. There's also advice on the app on what are some of the changes that you can make. So please dive into the show notes and get to know more about that. And Collins, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you so much, David. I appreciate you, and thanks for the opportunity. Looking forward to talk about our progress at some point.
Yeah, for sure. I think that there are going to be more areas that we're going to explore even after this, and for sure we can get updates maybe in the next couple of months to see if people are really listening.
Yes.
Have a good day, buddy.
And you. Thank you.
Hey there. Thank you so much for sticking to the end of this episode. Now there is a call to action. So why don't you engage with our community of green charters on our social media platforms? Find more details and links in the show notes. Get involved with the podcast by emailing us at glcpodcast@echoamitsolutions.com or DM via our social media platforms. We cannot do the same things expecting different results. The urgency of climate change demands actions now and not in 2050. So, dear Green Chatters, see you on the next episode, and remember, live green.